As famously said by Doe Zantamata, it is only in our darkest hours that we may discover the true strength of the brilliant light within ourselves that can never ever be dimmed. Now, before we start the whole podcast running, let me ask you guys a quick question. Have you ever been through the darkest moment of your life and feel like giving up? Well, if you feel like giving up, this episode is for you. Hi, my name is Rayson Chu, and I'm your host for the Legacy Show. And tonight, it's our honor and pleasure to have invited an incredible entrepreneur. His name's none other than Kevin Palmieri. Kevin is CFO, founder, and co host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self improvement podcast with more than 1,000 episodes and 600K plus listens in over 125 countries. And after hitting his goal of a six-figure income, Kevin realized that there had to be more. He had the car, the money, the typical American dream. He had it all. It took him getting it all to realize that what matters most is your thoughts. And that's how Next Level University was born. And remember just now in the earlier part of the podcast, I actually said that if you feel like giving up, this is the episode for you. Well, Kevin has a really heartwarming story that he will be sharing with us later on in this episode, where how he actually fell through the trudges, and then after that he managed to pull himself out of that and managed to become this level of success. Well, without further ado, let's welcome this amazing guest into the house. Woohoo! Hey, hey.
Rayson, thank you so very much. I appreciate the wonderful intro, and I'm very excited to chat with you. Thank you for having me on, my friend.
Oh, I really, have been really excited, especially when I know that, man, the guy from Next Level University is coming onto my podcast. I'm gonna rock the show with him, baby.
I
And of
appreciate it.
course, yeah, and of course, just wondering how have you been, man? It's been a while we've actually chatted.
I've been very well. I've been very well. I got married last month, so
Oh,
I'm a newly married man, which is wonderful. So everything is coming together. The health, wealth, and love is all growing at the same rate, and at the end of the day, that's what we're playing for. So I'm very grateful and very fulfilled.
oh, nice. Congrats on your marriage,
Thank you.
man.
Thank
I
you.
I believe it's something that every man would want to have, and that is to be with the love of his dreams and be able to hustle together, build their dreams together, and all these things. And man, it's awesome to actually to know that, and also at the same time, I'm pretty sure the audience they are mainly in Singapore, and also some of them are in other parts of the world. They would want to actually know you more. So can you share with the audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So as Rayson so eloquently put it, I am the host, the CFO, and the co-founder of Next Level University. Our podcast, in a nutshell, is holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. I think as a dream chaser, somebody who wants more, we all kind of deal with the same struggles and the same problems and the same fears and the same judgments. So our goal is to talk about that 7 days a week. We do an episode every single day.
Nice.
Below that, beneath that, other than the podcast, I'm just a guy who really, really wants to help people. I've had my fair share of pain in my life, and I want to try to help others avoid that. I love exercise, mixed martial arts, and hanging out on the couch on a lazy Sunday after I finish my work.
Okay, okay. So for Next Level University, who are your target audience usually? Is it entrepreneurs, or is it like those people who just got out from college?
Yeah, what we have found is our target audience is anybody who wants more out of life. I know that's very broad and not super specific, but the through line in our audience is it's usually people who have struggled with low self-worth and low self-belief. And they're tuning in because through our stories, through our lessons, through our conversations, we can help them understand what self-worth actually means, and we can help them build their belief through our 1,000+ episodes. Yeah.
Ah, okay, nice. Okay, so, well, okay. I'm pretty sure those people who are tuning in you guys should actually check out Next Level University. It is one hell of a show. I've
Thank you.
listened to it on Spotify, on iTunes, and even at the same time, you can actually check them out on YouTube as well. It's really good. I really love the videos that they have been putting out. And just want to ask you, before we dive into the main focus of our interview, our listeners would love to get to know you a bit better. So, can you tell us what inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I definitely was not quote unquote a born entrepreneur. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never planned on having a business. That was never in the cards for me. But I had an interesting opportunity when I was in my mid 20s, and I got this job in the weatherization industry. And weatherization is going into a building and making it more energy efficient. So, working in
Oh,
the attic, working on the windows, working on the doors, just making sure you're saving as much energy as possible. The beautiful part of this job was, since I worked for the state and sometimes the government, I made really good money. So anywhere from 60 to 120 US dollars per hour, which was really, really, really good for somebody who didn't go to college and had no idea how they were ever going to make that kind of money. Now, the interesting thing, Rayson, is I got promoted to a foreman. So I was running jobs, and I wanted to make as much money as humanly possible because that's what I thought life was about. I thought it was about making as much money as you could. So I was on the road every single week for 10 out of the 12 months that year because most of the work we did was on the road. So I was like 6 hours away from my house most of the time, living in hotels, driving back and forth to the job site, working different shifts. But I didn't care because I was making a lot of money. So we got to the end of that year. I remember standing at my kitchen table. I slid open my final pay stub of the year, and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. But I remember nothing changed internally. I thought me making that money was going to fix my lack of confidence. It was going to fix my low self worth. It was going to fix my insecurities. It actually made a lot of them worse because I thought it was supposed to fix them. So I realized in that moment that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously. I just been living by accident, hoping for the best. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. And that was the podcast. That's when I first started the podcast. Before it was long before it was Next Level University, it was the Hyperconscious podcast. And in the beginning, like for many people, it was a passion project. I just wanted to interview people and have fun. But as I started doing it, I kept falling more and more and more in love with it while I was actually falling less and less in love or out of love with my job. So I started calling out of work. I'd show up late. I'd leave the job site early. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And my mental health was going down the tube. And eventually, I was so stuck. I felt so trapped. I was working in New Jersey, which was like 6 hours away from where I lived. And my alarm clock went off at like 5:15 in the morning. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And it was like there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station. And one was saying, you're stuck here forever. You can't leave this job. You make too much money. If you do leave, what will your friends think? If you do leave, what will your family think? And if you do leave, are you really going to make this podcast successful? That's not something that happens for you. And in that moment, Rayson, I believe that if I took my life, I would take my problems with me. And that's the dark spot that you were talking about, really getting to your darkest point. I'm blessed because I have a wonderful business partner who is my mentor. And I messaged him and I said, hey, Alan, I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. This is my situation. I don't know what to do. I feel trapped here. And he said something very profound. He said, Kevin, so much has changed for you over the last couple of years, but your environment hasn't changed that much. I think it's time for you to change your environment. And 2 or 3 months later, or 3 or 4 months, I don't know how long it was, I left my job. And that's why I became an entrepreneur, because I found quote unquote success. I realized that was not the version of success that I wanted. And I wanted to be a professional, full-time, everyday, my own boss podcaster. And that's why I started in a nutshell. Yeah.
wow, impressive.
Thank you.
This this is I would say a rags to riches kind of success story in my opinion, because going to work and then after that slowly and surely falling out of love from this job that has been paying you like 100 grand, 120 grand, a year is like, man, this is something that it's pretty stable, I would say, right? And then next moment you decided, hey, I want to go and take that leap of faith
Yeah.
and be an entrepreneur. And I'm pretty sure, other than being an entrepreneur, there's no other plan B that you had, right?
No, no. I remember when I left my job, my mom and my grandmother said, "Are you like what are you going to do? You're going to go find another job?" And I said, I will never work for somebody else as long as I live. I will die trying. I'm either going to make it or I'm going to die trying because I can't do that. And again, I have nothing against that. It's just not it's not for me. I've always wanted to do something different. I've always wanted to be my own boss and make my own schedule and work from home. I've always wanted to do that. So I think the pain that I was dealing with was one part of it. And then Alan's kind of gave me permission by saying, well, go try something else. So I think I had enough pain in the moment to make a change. And then I had the permission from somebody else who was already an entrepreneur. And it was like, well, I guess this makes sense now. If it's ever going to make sense, it's now. So I knew it was worth a try. I didn't know if I'd be successful, but I knew if I was successful, it would be worth it.
Nice. Well, so it talks so much about mindset over here, in my opinion, right? And
Yeah.
how did you actually build that mindset up? Because at that point of time, you wanted to commit suicide. You just want to die with your problems, right? And next moment, Alan just told you, "Hey, just change your environment." And then next moment, you changed it within a few months, and then boom, there you are, becoming an entrepreneur step by step. So what did you do to actually change that whole mindset of yours to become so positively driven, and
I,
so I would say so positively driven and going that extra mile to make sure that that dream of yours of becoming an entrepreneur work.
I had a lot of really, really deep conversations with people, especially Alan in the beginning. Alan and I would meet up at the studio to record 3 episodes, and it would take us 8 hours because we'd be talking about our lives and we'd be talking about our past and we'd be talking about relationships and we'd be talking about the world and ego and confidence and what does it all mean. So, yeah, I think I've just had a really good sounding board for the last 5 years where this is a good example. Alan and I meet every Monday, so we're recording this on a Tuesday. Alan and I meet every Monday virtually from 10 a.m. until 7 p.m. It's blocked off. You can't get a hold of me. I don't do anything but sit down with Alan and record. Yesterday, we only recorded 2 episodes, and we were together for the entire day. Most of that was deep philosophical talks. We're talking about our past. We're talking about our childhood, our traumas. So I think that's what I did, Rayson, is I got very, very, very familiar with my past. And I think when you get familiar with your past, you can start to understand why your present is set up the way it is and what does that ultimately mean for your future. If you're somebody who is, let's just say, shy, I'm not the type of person who goes up on stage and speaks. My question for you is, did you decide that, or was that decided by somebody else for you? Maybe it was in school, maybe it was your parents. You got to figure out where most of your thoughts came from, because most of your thoughts aren't really your own. They're adopted or they're given to you. So that's what I did, Rayson. I looked back and I explored my past because I think at a deep level I understood that so much of my present and my future is dependent on my past. I got to get right with my past, figure out what's holding me back, figure out what's positive. That really helped me start the process of shifting my mindset and then just asking why. Why am I afraid to do this? Why am I excited to do this? Why am I avoiding this? Why am I running to this? Asking yourself why before you do anything or after you do anything is a wonderful introspective exercise.
I agree. I agree. This is how humans actually develop their curiosity by asking a lot of why, and that's how they actually created missiles, rockets, and a lot of other stuff. Even the mics that we are having right now. Why do we need a mic, right? Why do we need all this amazing technology? Because we want to live a better life. We want to have a better environment, a surrounding that is good for us to, you know, have our own podcast like this and all. And I'm pretty sure, while you were actually building this up in terms of next level university, you would have read some books, right? So tell us, Kevin, what I would say, what one to two books have actually impacted your life so far?
One would be The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. That is a great book when it comes to understanding the long term possibilities. Another one is Mindset by Carol Dweck. I definitely started this journey with a fixed mindset 100%. I didn't understand that. I didn't know there was a difference. That helped me tremendously. And then I'll just add one more. When I started leaning into, okay, we're an actual business now, I have to know more about business. There's a book called Business Made Simple by Donald Miller, a wonderful book for anybody in any stage of business. It's a great book.
Wow. Okay. Cool. I'll definitely go and check that out. But of course, mindset. I've read it. Is
Mm.
really awesome. It changes the perspective about life and everything else. It's really a good, solid book, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kevin, I'm pretty sure while you were building next level university, or while you were actually building yourself up in terms of entrepreneurship, you must have met some failures along the way, right? So, can you tell us what's your favorite failure of yours?
It's interesting, Rayson. My favorite failure is actually long before I ever became an entrepreneur, but it speaks to everything about being an entrepreneur. So I, believe it or not, I went to the fire academy in Massachusetts. So my goal was to be an on-call firefighter. That's how you get your foot in the door as a firefighter. So I went to the fire academy, and this fire academy, I think it was either 3 months or 4 months of classes 2 times a week or 3 times a week, depending on the week. I don't really remember. But this is what I will tell you. A couple of the classes were you sitting in a classroom learning from books and presentations and videos. And then every week or every other week, there was a practical where you'd go, you'd learn about fire extinguishers. You would go use the jaws of life. You would do live fire situations, car fires, all this other stuff. And I remember throughout this entire process, I was always so afraid to, number one, ask questions, and number two, look like an idiot. I was always so
Okay.
afraid to make a mistake in front of everybody and have them laugh at me. So there was times where the instructors would say, "Does anybody have any questions?" And I would have like 100 questions. I just never had the courage to raise my hand and say I did. And I ended up graduating. And when you graduate, you become somebody who is technically allowed to be on call with your fire department. So when you're on call, you get a pager, and it's your job to show up to the fire station when that pager goes off. 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning, whatever it is, you go to the fire station. So I think it was the second night I had the pager. It goes off. And I was like, okay, here we go. This is happening. This is real. Okay. I drive down to the station. I get my gear on. I jump on one of the engines, and we pull up to this house. And there's a car on fire in the front driveway.
Okay.
And the second we get off the truck, the captain says, "All right, Kevin, connect this hose to this hose and do this." And I remember when he said that, I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, wait, what? Connect what to what? Where? I have no clue what's going on here. And in that moment, I realized that every time I had the opportunity to ask a question and I didn't, I set myself up for failure now. And this is the lesson. You either get the feedback little by little along the way, or you get it all at once. And that was the lesson I learned that day. And I ended up leaving the fire department shortly thereafter because I realized if there was somebody in that car, or if we were going to a house, it could have been a lot worse. And I could have been the reason that somebody got very, very hurt that night because of my lack of awareness and my lack of courage when it came to asking questions. So while it's one of my most painful failures, I would also say it's one of the ones that has led me in a positive direction. It's definitely a through line for my life now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, like, you had the opportunity to ask some questions, what to do, and all this other stuff, and then you didn't do it, and then boom, something really bad happens, and then after that, man, you had some regrets that you had to live with for
Yeah. Lots of
part of
regrets.
a part of your life, I would
Yeah.
say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that must be really painful,
It
and
was. It was.
And this failure, right? How has it like set you up for later success, other than uh, allowing you to learn that hey, I need to ask questions more before that. before doing anything? Any other things that you have actually learned?
Yeah, it's that theme for me, that takeaway of no matter what in life, you're going to get feedback. You can either hide from the feedback until it's great enough to overcome you, or you can get bits of feedback along the way so you can course correct. So I think of it from everything, where if we're having a conversation with somebody on our team, I have one of two things I can do. I can suppress my truth and not lead effectively. And eventually, a year down the road, I can explode in this person and say, hey, you should have done this, you should have done this. It's not going to work. Or I can give little course corrections along the way and say, hey, no worries at all. You're doing great. But a little 1% improvement would be if you did this. I think that's a great thing to think about when it comes to not only business relationships, but personal relationships, intimate relationships. A lot of us hold in our truth when, if you realize I can give a little bit of feedback, I can give a little bit of feedback, I can give a little bit of input, then I think a lot of relationships would be more successful. So I've used it in those two regards, but especially in my intimate relationship.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree with you on giving feedback and receiving feedback as well. As a human being, we love to actually give feedback rather than receiving it. So
Yeah.
how do you open yourself up to feedbacks when it comes to, especially those constructive yet a bit negative kind of feedback?
I have a fairly good understanding of my ego at this point. So one of two things, or I guess there's a couple things I do. One, I've worked very, very, very hard over the last 5 years to make sure that when I'm getting feedback, I don't allow it to attach to my self-worth. So if after this episode, Rayson says, Kev, that wasn't your best work, and it just wasn't that great, it wasn't as good as I expected, I can't allow that to attach to my self-worth and say, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I'm not valuable. Oh, this isn't, I'm going to fail. It's just, okay, now what do I do with that? So that's one piece of it. And I think the other part is I understand my initial reaction is it's going to be to get angry. It's going to be to
Yeah.
get defensive. And I have to do my best to override that and say, okay, let me go into this with the understanding that I'm going to get triggered. I might hear some things that hurt me, but in the grand scheme of things, I'm probably getting closer to the truth, and I have confidence in my ability to improve anything that gets thrown at me. But that's something that's practiced, with time and experience.
True, true. I agree. And I'd like to ask you, right? What is something that you wish you knew earlier when you first started out as an entrepreneur?
I I always thought that there were people that were just quote unquote successful. It would be This was my thought for a long time. I'm not like that person. So that person has a nice car and they have a nice house and they have a lot of money and they have a successful business. I'm not like that person. When in reality, the truth is I was not practicing the behaviors that that person was practicing. There's a big difference between you being like somebody and you practicing and being consistent with things that other people are practicing and being consistent with. So that understanding that it wasn't that I was quote unquote any different. It was that my behaviors on the day to day weren't the same as theirs yet. And I wish I knew that earlier, because I think I would have started shifting a little bit earlier. For a long time, I had the identity of I'm not an entrepreneur. I couldn't be a successful business owner. I blank, blank, blank. So yeah, I wish I understood the importance of identity and how shifting your identity can shift everything else for you.
Okay, nice. So when you say that when you are shifting identity, does it quote unquote equates to fake it till you make it, or it's
Not for
totally
me.
different?
Yeah, it's totally different, because the problem with fake it till you make it is there's ego there. Because you're making up for lack by overcompensating for something you don't have yet. So for me, when I say that, it's more about a lot of people. So in the self-improvement industry, it's very simple for me to say, well, just don't let judgment bother you. Just don't care what people think. It's not that big of a deal. When on an identity level, that's where the work has to happen. So you have to dig into, well, why do you actually care what people think? Oh, because my mom always used to talked down to my ideas about starting a business, or my teachers never believed in me. And that's something that carried on throughout my life. So when I talk about identity level shift, all I'm saying is anybody can tell you how to change your behavior, and they can say these are the habits you should be doing. But most of that shift starts in the identity level. If you do not identify as the type of person who is athletic, you will not partake in behaviors or actions that are in alignment with that. So, yeah, that's just the understanding for me is your identity is controlling so much of your outcomes, but not everybody understands that yet. And I definitely didn't as fast as I wish I did.
I agree. It's just like this saying: be, do, have,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to be like an entrepreneur with that identity, like that mindset shift, like you had, and then do whatever that you want to do as an entrepreneur, and then after that, slowly and surely, you will have whatever that you always wanted to have in terms of the money or the lifestyle and whatever as an entrepreneur. From what I know, right? From what I can perceive from what you're saying as well.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
With enough
yeah,
time. That's the other thing too. Is there is a lot of time that goes into this that I know some people are either accidentally or intentionally leaving out of their stories. We weren't very successful for the first 3 years. There was very little success, and it just you get more successful as you go, but you got to be in it for the long haul.
yeah. I agree, man. It's just like what Gary Vee always says. It's not a sprint; it's always a marathon,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah. And I would like to ask you, right, like those people that are tuning in right now or they're watching the replay, they want to be an entrepreneur, right? So you have actually been through that phase of from, be, from an employee to an entrepreneur, right? So what advice would you give to these people who want to be an entrepreneur, who wants to break out of that, 9 to 5, that shift work and all this other stuff, and become an entrepreneur? What advice would you give them?
I would ask them a simple question. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, how disciplined are you at work? Because you're going to have to be twice as disciplined when you're not at work. Because when you're working for yourself, there's no clock to punch, there's no timesheets, there's no insurance, there's no paychecks, there's no time off. I find that a lot of people, Rayson, when they leave, it's this cold water splash on the face moment of, wait, this is very, very real. And now everything is up to me. So the piece of advice I would give is start practicing very disciplined behavior while you're still at your other job, because you're going to need that discipline when it's crunch time. And I didn't realize that in the beginning either. I had no idea it was going to be the way it was. I thought I was going to work a couple hours and be able to do whatever I wanted. And very quickly I realized, oh, that's no way that's going to work. That's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to build a business on that. So, yeah, I don't know that. I mean, there's a lot of tactics, obviously, but I don't know that people talk about that enough. You hear people say, well, if I had as much time as you, or if I work from home like you, I'd be able to get so much more done. Not necessarily. I mean, maybe, but not necessarily, because when you have time, it gets filled pretty quickly. And if you're not disciplined, it gets filled with things that aren't necessarily aligned with your ultimate success. So yeah, I would say understand and tap into the power of discipline, especially if it's something that you struggle with, because as an entrepreneur, it will be tested for sure.
Yeah, totally agree with you on that. So for those of you who are tuning in, make sure you are really, really disciplined and don't let your, I would say, naivety and also your slackiness affect you from becoming that entrepreneur that you always want to be. And I'd like to ask you, right, what's the most powerful piece of advice your mentor has given you, Kevin?
So I was actually thinking of this recently, and I'm realizing that my business partner has been mentoring me every day for the last since I started this journey. And one of the things he has always said to me since the very beginning, when we were getting 4 downloads a day, he always would say, "Kev, big things start small. Big things start small." And he has said that probably every day for the last 5 years. That's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given, because I think as human beings, it's very hard for us to understand that somebody who made it to where they made it, they started somewhere too. right? They
Yes.
started somewhere. It might be in the same exact spot you did, but it's very hard for us to understand that they're where they are based on time, and we look at where we are and we assume we can't get there eventually. But I think that's an important understanding. Everything that's massive right now started small. Everything.
Yeah.
Everything did. So that's an important understanding. And then I would say the other thing too is you got to look at the numbers, all numbers, like the importance of data.
Numbers. You mean
The,
stats?
yeah, stats, data. It, if you're making decisions based purely on emotion, you're probably not going to be as successful as you would if you made decisions based on data. But if you only make decisions based on data, you're going to hurt a lot of feelings in the process. So I think it's important to have an approach of emotional decision making paired with data driven decision making. But that's something I didn't have. I didn't have an understanding of math or numbers or growth rates or any of that. That was something that was very important for me. So big things start small and track what you're doing every day. Those would be the two.
Okay, awesome. Big things definitely start small. And like what T. Half Ecker always said, every master was once a disaster. So you guys should actually, be patient with yourself and not thinking that, oh, I want to be successful in the next 5 years. I'm going to sprint. I'm going to be on Forbes Success Magazine or even
Yeah.
Next Level University and realize that, hey, it's not so easy to actually get to where Kevin, I, or any other people have actually been doing our craft. So definitely it's not easy, but definitely it's gonna be worth it as long
Yes.
as you're gonna be disciplined and listen to what Kevin has mentioned, all those golden nuggets that he has shared, apply them, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna make it and you will not have to fake it. All right. So yes, and I would like to ask you, right? I notice you guys have been recording for over 1,000 episodes for the past few months and even years to come, right? I want to ask you, right? Like, what's the biggest thing you have ever learned from recording over 1,000 episodes?
Most humans do not have a good way to measure growth. So I always say this, and Rayson, same for you. You can go back and watch your first episode and realize, oh, wow, on blank date of blank year, this is where I was. This is where my awareness was. This is where my speaking abilities were. I can tell I forgot what I was trying to say there. We have the very unique opportunity to see how much 1,000 episodes of doing the same thing every day adds up. And that, for me, that is the biggest lesson I have learned is it's almost more about the reps than anything else. So you showing up and performing, if you show up and perform every day for 5 years, you will get dramatically better. Will it feel like it? Maybe not. Because from the day to day, I'm very maybe no better than I was yesterday, but I'm definitely better than I was when I started. And I might not be any better tomorrow than I am right now, but I'm definitely better tomorrow than I was 6 months ago. That the time perspective of mastery is something that it's been a huge breakthrough for me because I've never really done anything this long with this much intention, with this much passion, with this much focus for improvement. So that the time perspective, especially looking backwards to recognize growth, is very hard if you don't have mile markers set up. So I always say this to people. If you're a podcaster or a speaker or you have a YouTube channel or something like that where you have footage and you can look back on, awesome. If not, record a video of yourself right now and say, today is whatever day, whatever year, whenever you hear this, and this is what's going on in my life. And this is my biggest struggle. This is my biggest success. This is what I'm looking forward to the most. This is what I'm most afraid of. And then watch it in 6 months and see what's changed. And then watch it in a year. That I think that's huge.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, this is what everyone should be doing. Since we have a cell phone with us, we have a webcam in front of us, we can actually do this. We can just record ourselves and, you know, day and date, and then tell ourselves like what you mentioned. What have I actually been doing and I struggled, and which are the things that we have triumphed? Then I am pretty sure this is something that it will be solid, especially the next 6 months, a year later, or whatsoever. when we watch it again, we realize that, hey, man, so much has have changed. We thought that, well, life's gonna suck because we don't have that much followers, we don't have much subscribers or things like that. But then we do not need millions of people, right? We
Yeah.
only need those handful of people who are really supportive and who has always been there with us and for us. I'm pretty sure that is good enough. But of course, it would be great if we have multiple hundreds and thousands of people, because in business terms, sales wise, it's going to be really, really effective, especially when we have so many people who are supporting and buying things from us, in a sense.
Yeah. Well, as I said, big things start small. So if you have a small group, that's how it starts for everybody. Make sure you treat the small group like they're awesome human beings, and that group will grow. I can almost promise you that. I can't promise you that, but I can almost promise.
All right. Okay. And Kevin, I would like to ask you, right, what are the bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise in terms of entrepreneurship and podcasting? What are the bad recommendations that you've heard?
Oh man. In podcasting, one of the things I hear all the time is either pay to get listens or get people to sponsor your show. And I think those are giant mistakes for personal. If you're paying for any sort of followers, I hear about that all the time. Giant mistake. Worst sad mistake ever of all time. It throws everything off. It's not real. It's not going to help your business that much. And then the same thing when it comes to the podcast. A lot of people care way more about looking good than being good. And yeah, you can win on that for a while, but eventually you'll get found out. And that's one of the pieces of advice that I hear a lot of people saying is like, well, you got to make sure it looks this way and sounds this way, and almost to the detriment of people practicing their craft. So that would be one in the podcast space. And then I just think in the self-improvement space, a lot of people are giving the advice that it's all just going to work out. And it's not. That's not true. There's a bunch of people who Rayson could have interviewed, but they didn't make it. They didn't make it as entrepreneurs, so nobody knows about their business or nobody knows about their podcast. And if somebody gave them the advice that it's all going to work out, just do what you love and it's all going to work out, I don't believe that. If that was true, there would be a lot more successful people if it was all just going to work out. So I think it's empowering to believe that you're guided and it's possible to work out and it's possible that it's all going to connect one day. But I think it's disempowering to assume it's going to happen, because then you might not work as hard or you might not make decisions based the same way. Having faith in the goal is important, but assuming it's just going to happen is somewhat delusional, and it will hurt you in the long run. And I don't want to see people end up like that. One of the reasons we stopped having guests on Racing is because oftentimes people would say that. They'd say, well, if it's meant to be, it'll be, or it's going to work out. And it's like, I don't think so. I think that's disempowering to somebody who might not be ready to hear that yet. They might assume that means, well, I can just go to the beach and if it's meant to be, it'll be. It's disempowering advice for somebody who is very beginning, in the very early stages of their journey, I would say.
Okay. So you would say that for in terms of like podcasting wise, when you see like some of them, okay, I wouldn't want to name names, okay, but I do notice something like this on the trend as well. Like YouTube, you get to see people with millions of followers, or probably hundreds of thousands of followers, like 100K, 500K, but you get to see their views is like 30 views, 40 views, 50
Yeah.
views. So that could be something like someone has actually bought followers to pump in, right, in a sense.
Yep. I see it all the time on social media. It's like, if somebody has 1 million followers and they're getting 3 comments, either something's broken, or if you look and their comments are all completely not connected to the content they're posting, there's a lot of that going on, because right now social media is the resume. I mean, if you have 100,000 followers in a Ferrari, people will work with you. And that's par for the course. That's social proof in a nutshell. But what people don't understand is that doesn't necessarily help your business. It might make you look good, it might help marketing, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help your business, because you have to be able to add value behind the scenes. You might look valuable in front, but behind the scenes, you have to have value. And I think a lot of people are getting caught up in that.
Yeah, true. I mean, like these days, there will be people who will have like influencers giveaways, right? And then you buy into the influencer giveaway, and then after that, what happens is you get the followers. Yes, they look real, and everything, and then next moment, the amount of followers will slowly drop,
Yeah.
and even like I would say the amount of likes is not, it does not tally with the amount of followers that you have. And I noticed this not just on like social media influencers, but even like I would say those celebrity entrepreneurs. They have like millions of followers, but their likes and their comments are not as much as the followers that they have.
Yep.
So that's why I was like thinking, hey, could it be algorithm, or could it be really they bought followers? And probably you actually answered that question for me with that,
I
right?
would
And
guess. I would guess it's the second one. And just think of it this way: I got a message 3 days ago to pay whatever it was, $2,500 to be in Forbes or whatever the magazine is. It's like
yeah,
if you have money, you can win if you want to go that way. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to build your business. You have to make sure your clients are happy. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But Rayson, I never knew that at the beginning. I didn't understand that you could like pay to get in magazines and you could pay to get the best of this. And it's just very interesting. A lot of what we see out there isn't real. And I just don't want people to find out the hard way. I've had clients pay $10,000 for blank and get nothing. And it's like, it's sad. It's
oh,
sad that people are getting ripped off when it comes to some things.
yeah. I did think that PR is very important for a business, but I didn't expect like paying like few $1,000s and you don't get anything out of it. It's really, I'm pretty sure the person who paid it is gonna feel very crappy.
Of
Uh,
course.
yeah, I mean, like 10,000, you're supposed to go to Forbes, and then they give you Elephant Journal, for example, and and other things, right? Or other mediocre kind of magazines.
Yeah.
Then it's not worth what you've paid as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I totally agree with you. Like, we should not buy followers, because buying followers do make you yourself look good. And unfortunately, I did it before, and and it really hurt me in a sense.
Yeah.
And even though it's like a couple hundreds and things like that, but of course, it wasn't really worth it in a long run as well. And well, thanks. And of course, like this is something that I always ask. Okay, as we are coming to the end of the podcast, right? Always ask my guest this question, and that is this, right, Kevin? Imagine this: you suddenly lose everything. Okay, your money, your reputation. So, what would you do from day one to day 30 to save yourself?
Yeah, that is a wonderful question. My brain goes in a lot of ways. I think I would just start having conversations with people and try to add value to their life and then ask for help. I really think that's probably what I would do. I know a lot of people would probably say, well, I have this business plan and I would do this. For me, that's not necessarily where my mind goes. I would do that. I would start reaching out to people and having conversations and try to intentionally add value into their lives. And then maybe from there, I'd see if they're open to coaching. If that doesn't work, maybe I would just say, look, this is what happened to me. This is what I was building before. I know I can build this again. I just need a little bit of a push. I need some momentum. So if you're willing to help, I'd be forever indebted, and you can be part of the business. Something like that. That's a challenge. That's a very, very challenging thing, because I don't know where I would be without the business and the brand and the reputation and all the things I've learned. But yeah, I would start conversations and focus on adding value. That's the through line. When you add value, people, at the end of the day, the person who adds the most value wins eventually.
Yeah.
It just I don't know how long it's going to take. It depends on what you're doing. So that's what it would be for me. Add value.
Okay, awesome, awesome. All right, wow, nice. So for those of you who just tune in, this is Kevin Palmieri, and of course, he has this freebie for you guys. So this is something that is really awesome. It's gonna be something that will bring you to the next level. Okay, so this is actually from Next Level University, and it's a course which is in Teachable. So you can go to Next Level University Courses, teachable.com, and then go in and check it out. And it's free. Okay, it's free for everyone who are tuning in, and you can actually check it out and try it out and see how this course can bring you to the next level. So with that, I would like to thank Kevin for appearing on the podcast. I'm really, really indebted and grateful for you to come, and the time right now, I'm pretty sure right now it's like what, 8 or 9 a.m. in the States.
Yes,
Wow.
9:47.
9:47. Wow. Thank you so
Of
much, for
course.
waking up early and come on board the podcast. Man, so grateful.
My
So
pleasure, Race, and I appreciate you. I love what you're doing, and it's my pleasure to join you. I appreciate you having me on.
yep. Thank you so much. So, with that, for those of you who are tuning in, thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys from coming on to watch us and listen to all this. And make sure you guys have a notebook to write down every single tip and advice that Kevin has actually given to us. So, stay tuned for the next episode of the Legacy Show next week. And see you guys real soon. All right. So with that, take care and stay safe. All right. Bye bye.